Hey guys, it's Mr. Oda. In today's video lesson, we are going to be starting Unit 5, which is land and water use. And so in this unit, we're going to be talking a lot about how humans impact the land and the water that we use to build our cities, build our populations. And so we're going to talk about all of that in this unit. For our first topic, we're going to be talking about 5.1, the tragedy of the commons. Now, we did an activity in class about this, but I want to share with you guys what that is. Your objective for today is going to be able to explain the concept of the tragedy of the commons, and you're going to be able to explain environmental concepts and processes. So, what is the tragedy of the commons? Well, the tragedy of the commons is the idea, and it suggests that any single person will use shared resources, but for their own self-interests, and they won't really be thinking about the common good. And so what happens in that case is that there's going to be a depletion of resources. There are many different examples that you can see in real life, such as the fishing market in George's Bank. It was shut down because there were many different individual fishermen who took resources from the area, and because they did that, the population of the fish eventually went down, and so it went to the point where the market had to shut down because they could not reproduce fast enough and all the fish died out. Now, some examples of common areas that can be abused in this way, we have, of course, the ocean. There's plenty of fish in there, and no one really owns the ocean, so people can kind of do whatever they want here. Other examples are forests, cutting down trees and taking land, as well as grazing area. Having different farmers having their animals graze on this land can cause a huge impact on how much that land can be used. And finally, the idea of air pollution and too many people driving on the streets, this will cause a problem for the common area, which would be just our atmosphere. Now, the question starts to become how we can sustainably use the common areas. And so there's a couple of different ways you could do that. The first thing you could do is to regulate the use. So some examples of this are by creating hunting and fishing licenses, so only certain people are allowed to hunt in areas. Land use permits, so only certain people can use the land there. As well as creating quotas, and quotas are limits on how much you can do something. So for example, you can have a country only be able to catch 1,500 tons of fish, or harvest 2,000 trees per year. Additionally, you could do stuff like selectively cutting trees, which you only cut certain trees that are ready to be harvested and leave the rest. You can also replenish after use, which means just replanting trees after you cut some down. You can throw back the fish that are pregnant, so you always have a supply of young fish being born. And you can also rotate the grasslands in which are used for grazing, as to not destroy the soil there. Finally, you can also make sure that people comply with this. You can ensure that they comply through the use of treaties and laws, such as those made by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. And when you have those things, you can charge people for oversight of these treaties, meaning that if they don't follow these rules, you can fine them, you can charge them with certain crimes, and they can lose a lot of money. You can also do the opposite and give people incentives for following the law, such as subsidies or even debt forgiveness, tax breaks, things like that. So you can either do positive or negative reinforcement when it comes to following these laws. Now, to make sure you understand the concept of the tragedy of the commons, let's do a practice FRQ together. Forests are often considered a common or a shared resource. They can often experience the tragedy of the commons. For question 1, explain the concept of the tragedy of the commons. For question 2, describe one potential approach to reducing the occurrence of the tragedy of the commons in the forests. So how would you stop this tragedy from happening? And for 3, to extend your knowledge, identify a negative effect of increasing pest populations in forests or agriculture areas? What would be the negative effect of allowing more pests to be in these areas? I hope you guys were able to get a lot of information from this video lesson. If you have any questions, please ask them in class, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.